Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and a very special welcome to a man who shares the name with an Australian sports person. But for those of you listening, I am not talking with the Australian sports person. I am talking with the even more famous, coming in all the way from London, Mr. Adam Cerra. How are you, my friend?
I am well, and thank you for inviting me.
Mate, thanks for being on. We spoke a few weeks ago, and we had a little bit of a, not so much a mix up, but it happened to be about 11 p.m. at night time for you, and you mentioned that you'd been up, I think, since about, or working since about 8 or 9 that morning, and it had been a
Yes.
huge day. And I'm thinking, no, we can't do a podcast about high ticket selling and ethics and integrity well into midnight. Although you probably could talk about that until midnight and beyond, but it's great to have you back on, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. For people who are listening, you're the founder and CEO of. Do you actually call it DFY, or done for you high ticket
Done for
clothing?
you,
Done for
closing
you.
agency. Yeah,
Yeah.
done for
Okay.
you, closing agency.
Nice. So we're going to delve into your background. I'm really intrigued with most of my guests, if not all my guests, to understand where you've come from and what you've done. And this is not a time to be bashful or shy, because I know you've worked with some big heavy hitters in the industries. You've been doing this for over 20 years. Can you just give us a bit of your background in terms of where this all started for you, and kind of what led you to do what you do today?
Yes. I've spent a great portion of my life in sales, and but in particular the sort of the high ticket coaching space.
Hmm.
It was around. It was in 2004. So over 20 years ago, and I was very fortunate to be introduced to Richard Bandler, the co-founder of NLP, Paul McKenna,
Yeah.
world's leading hypnotist, and they had a company, and I was basically running their sales team, and it really started from then. I started to develop a particular interest in that kind of area, that industry in
Mm.
selling personal development and coaching. And the subject matter that I was selling also influenced the way that I understood sales and how I sell today. So
Mm.
really going back then, and since then, I've been very fortunate to work with some of the biggest names in the industry, and we continue to work with them. So a lot of hard work and a bit of fortune.
Well, it is, and you mentioned a couple of big names there, but if you don't mind me sharing with the audience, you've also done some work with Mind Valley,
Yep.
and also the Jay Shetty organizations as well.
Yeah.
Before 2004, because I'm really intrigued as to how people get into sales. Because
Right.
it's fair to say that most people don't wake up one day, or don't go through primary school and say, "Hey, I reckon I'm going to be a professional salesperson."
Yep. Yep.
How did
Absolutely.
How did you fall into it? Because 20, I'm presupposing that you did, but how did it come about?
So my background, believe it or not, was in IT support. So
Is that right?
yeah, IT support. I started out in IT support. I if you couldn't be a doctor or an accountant or a solicitor, it was IT, right?
Yeah.
So I studied IT, got my first job, got my second job, got my third job, and then I was like, you know what? This is not for me. It was completely boring. Everyone knew it. All my colleagues knew I didn't like the job. So I just admitted, like, this is not the career that I want.
Yeah.
And looking for another job, I saw this ad, and it was selling trade courses. So how to be an electrician, how to be a
Hmm.
plumber, all that sort of stuff. And I just thought, I'm not doing anything right now. And I'd done some sales before. I used to have a market stall
Okay.
when I was sort of 17, 18. I had a
Yeah.
market stall and I was good at it. I enjoyed talking to people. So I thought maybe, there's some, there's an avenue there that I could develop. So anyway, I took this job and I was completely blown away by the owner of the company. He was, this is a football reference, but Alex Ferguson,
Yep.
right? He was the Alex Ferguson of sales.
Okay.
And he became my mentor, whether he knew it or not. But I absorbed everything from him, and he taught me the skill and the love of persuasion.
Hmm.
And from there, it was like a light bulb. Like, wow, this is actually a science, and you can see the impact on people positively, and it also could be negatively, depends on how
Mm.
you use it. But I could see that there was a positive impact, and I was very good. Out of 90 agents in the company, I was the top three.
Hmm.
And I was seen as the golden boy. I was very young those days. So, there were, my peers were like in their 40s, 50s. I, you know, I was a lot younger than them. And I was seen as the, uh, the prodigal son, if you like. Um, and wax on, wax off sort of thing. He was my Mr. Miyagi. But yeah, so it sparked from there, and then from there, I moved into the high ticket space.
Mm.
So it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal journey, and it's just been something that's constantly evolving, getting better since then.
Love that. It's of because I was going to ask you over the journey for you, have you formulated or come up with like an overarching meta sales philosophy, if you like? So, because I like asking teams as well, and particularly people in sales teams, as to what sales means to them and like being sold to. Because we're going to talk about your inverse closing method and
Correct.
selling with integrity and so forth. But do you have an overarching and have you created an overarching sales philosophy?
Yes, yes. So I have a background in philosophy as well. So I did a degree in philosophy at King's College. It's religion, philosophy, and ethics. And what that taught me is to define what you're talking about.
Hmm.
And when I the, when I train a closer for the first time, my first question to them is, what is it to sell? And you get a variety of different answers.
Hmm.
You get, oh, it's, you know how it is, the old days, oh, you sell the features, and we've moved on from there, right? We're a bit advanced from there. Then it's, the benefit, right? But now it's not the benefit, it's the outcome, right?
Hmm.
But in actual fact, it's neither of those. What you're selling is a buying decision that feels good.
Yeah.
And then I look at their face and they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. And then I say to them, you've been selling for God knows how long and you didn't even know what it was that you were engaging in. Isn't that weird? And they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really weird. So, first thing is to define what selling actually is at its fundamental core. And from there, you build your methodology and your understanding. But if
Mm.
I had an overarching principle, it would be, instead of selling your offer to the prospect, get the prospect to sell themselves for the offer. That's essentially what I would say.
In other words, get them to do the buying
Exactly.
and you simply guide them,
Exactly.
which
Exactly.
comes back to, I guess, the persuasion and the influencing techniques. But everything we talk about, and certainly from my perspective, is with a level of ethics and integrity. Because I'll be interested in your take on this as well. One of the interesting things a lot of salespeople tell me is I don't like to be known as a salesperson because sales has a bit of a icky, cringy kind of connotation to it.
Yes.
Versus I
Yeah.
say, well, actually, because what you were just talking about there is it's not the benefit, it's the outcome and hoping the helping the customer to make an educated buying or purchasing decision. I actually
Exactly.
believe that sales is the ultimate form of service. And if you can identify a problem and help that prospect articulate the problem, or you even better can articulate the problem in a way that they can't, they'll think, shit, Adam must have a solution for this. And you'd be then doing them a disservice if you didn't share that solution with them. Now, whether they buy anything or not is another thing entirely, but being
Yeah.
of service to them would be giving them the opportunity to at least look at what the solution might be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I always teach my closers that any virtue in excess can be a vice. And why do I say that? Is that you in a sales conversation, your position is not to sell, but to serve. But even serving beyond its limits becomes a vice. And
Mm.
what do I mean by that? If you embody that too much, that principle, you undermine your authority. You start to, yes, sir, 2 bags full, sir.
Yeah.
Would you like me to write that in the email? Would you want me to send that? You lower your status. So it's also important to not lower your status while serving. I think that's
Mm.
really important as well, because the reason they're on the call with you is you are supposed to be the shepherd. You're supposed to be the guide. But
Mm.
if you have less status than them and you're just more like, someone working in a retail store saying, how much is this? Can I buy that? You know, just throwing the price tag at them, right? You're not going to get that ability to lead someone. So I think that's also something to consider as well.
I absolutely love that. And the question that comes straight to the top of my head is for people listening to this, how do we establish the level of status? So how do we establish the, I guess, the authority? Do we use the Cialdini laws of authority and credibility, or is it something else we do to establish the fact that, hey, I have I have something that potentially will solve a problem, but I don't know whether you qualify for it or not.
Yes,
Is
yes.
there a way that you do that?
Yes. So um, I go through this in my book as well, and part of the methodology. So it's essential that in the first 10, 15 seconds or 20 seconds, you need to be able to establish your authority. And you can do that in two ways. So you can do that through vulnerability and
Mm,
credibility. So let's look at credibility. Credibility is the standard one. I've helped X many people. I have this certification. You're telling them very early on, listen, you're in the right place.
yeah.
Now, vulnerability is, look, I was in the same position as you. I made all these mistakes, and now I have the answer. And funny enough, people gravitate more towards the vulnerability.
Mm,
So now you may not have that vulnerability story, but you may know someone else's vulnerability story, right?
yeah.
You can weave that in. But that's really important to establish authority in the first sort of 10, 15, 20 seconds.
It is because it says to the potential customer that they are possibly in the right place. And obviously, there's still
Correct.
a process and a buying journey to go through, but
Exactly.
it doesn't start from the salesperson, inverted commas, selling the product or selling the service or selling the sizzle. It starts with establishing that credibility so um, the customer or the potential customer feels comfortable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, love it. Now, I'd love to know because there'll be people listening to this who sell services. There'll be people that listen to this that some of those services are almost intangible. Now, as a coach myself, sometimes it's difficult to sell the virtues and the benefits of coaching what you're going to get because you can't really see it
Yes.
because it's an experience. The process that you use, and we'll talk about the inverse closing method shortly, does it still apply irrespective of the service or the product? Like if you were selling a physical product, is the
Hmm.
methodology that you utilize still as effective as some of the intangible stuff?
That's a really good question. Um, I believe so. I believe so. It can be used. Um, I would say it's on steroids in the coaching space, right? Um, it can be used because ultimately the heart of the sales conversation is to understand what's lacking, what's causing dissatisfaction, right? What are the voids, and how what you're in terms of what you're selling, how that deals with that and provides a resolution.
Mm,
So that's at the essence of inverse closing. That's at the essence of every sales methodology. Where inverse closing is on steroids for the coaching world, because it was specifically designed for that,
yeah.
though it can be used, is that it's dealing with a very emotional sale. Because
Mm,
when you're selling something that's intangible, and it has a high ticket price. So we would say that's anything from 3,000 upwards to 100K.
Yeah.
Those two factors together demand a really sophisticated way of selling.
Mm.
So the kind of mistakes that you would make selling something tangible, you would never get away on a high ticket, say, coaching call when you're selling a coaching program of some sort.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And the reason I brought that up is because a lot of organizations that I work with, that I do sales training with or work with their leaders, the bulk of their training is all about the product. And it's all about the
Yeah,
features of the
product
products
knowledge.
and yeah, and it's just all the product knowledge. So when the salespeople go out into the marketplace and start talking to their prospective customers, and they rely on marketing to all the I guess market awareness
Yeah,
and develop
yeah,
those leads and so forth, they can't help themselves but default to talking about the product, and they almost
yeah.
lead with that. And so it's
Yes.
almost this push sale versus, well, hang on a second. I often say to sales teams, can you actually go out for the next week and have a conversation with your customers without mentioning anything about your product?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I love that. I love that. And guess what? That's a big problem in the coaching world,
mm,
right? So, and the reason they lead with that because it's easy.
yeah,
It's easy because it's just facts about your product. You just
yeah,
reel them off. It's in front of you, right? It's on a screen. It's easy. But sales is not about being easy.
no,
Sales is the exploration of the unknown.
mm,
And that's hard to do that. And that's why your go-to place is the product, right? That's why they do that. Because they lack the skill to navigate the conversation in the unknown.
mm,
Now, where's this problem show up in my world, in my industry, is that coaches and experts, they conflate their expertise in their subject matter with the expertise of selling.
hmm,
Just because you're an expert in your subject matter, it does not logically follow that you know how to sell it.
yeah,
Those are two different body of knowledge, right? Body of knowledges, right? It's a different body of knowledge. Your expertise in your subject matter, whether it's, I don't know, business coaching or health coaching, and the expertise of selling, those are distinct
mm,
areas of knowledge. And that's the biggest problem that coaches have. Well, I'm an expert at this. I should know how to sell it. Well, no. Someone who has minimal knowledge but is an expert in selling will always outdo someone who's an expert within their field and has minimal sales skills.
So can we explore that a little bit? Because
Yeah,
as you were
sure.
talking, I'm thinking, take founders, for example. Often founders are the best salesperson in the business because it's
Yeah.
been their baby, they've created it. So they're the
Yes.
they're the voice, they're the spokesperson. And when they try to expand and scale their business, they try to bring in a salesperson to do all the selling
Yeah.
and they don't succeed. So
Yes. Good
can
point.
can we explore that a little bit? Because
Yes, because
yeah.
yeah, this is brilliant. Again, it's a big problem because the way that a founder sells is very different from a salesperson who sells.
Mm,
Because the founder, part, it's, let me give you an analogy. Imagine you've got a really big brand and you're selling for a big brand, right? And you walk into a door of someone's home and you're selling their product. 50% of the sale is already done.
yeah.
Why? Because there's trust, there's credibility, right? There's authority there. So in the same way, when a founder enters a sales conversation, 50% of it's already done,
Yeah.
right? But with a salesperson, they don't have those luxuries. They don't have those tools already embedded in the sales conversation. So they have to work harder. And
Mm,
that's why many coaches who try and delegate their sales used what they teach them what they did and it fails
yeah.
because they overlook those conditions when they're selling. And this is a problem. And so therefore, the way that a salesperson sells for an expert or a founder has to be very different.
Mm, I love that. I love that. And from a perspective then, is it Is it specific things they have to do in order to generate that level of trust, that level of authority to the point where it doesn't default into the features of the coaching service or whatever the
Yeah.
mechanism of the program
So
is?
yeah, so when they come on the call, if the prospect is to a certain degree in awe of the person, they're already leading them,
Yeah.
right? They're already guiding them because they're in, oh, you're the oh, okay, you're the expert. Oh, I've been
Mm,
following your stuff. I've read your stuff. Whereas the salesperson is not in that position. So they
no.
have to utilize those aspects of the aspects that exist in that call, the qualities exist in the call with the founder, and adopt them in their own sales conversation in a different way because they can't obviously become the founder. So they have to tap into those aspects and more importantly, they have to understand the prospect. They have to work harder than the founder. They have to
Mm,
understand the prospect better than they understand themselves and be able to give them insight. And that's
yeah.
hard, right?
Yeah, it is. And how much of that in the world that you operate in is done on the call versus any research you can do about the individual before the call? Like in your world, is there like gates that people have to go through? Because a lot of businesses will do their qualification, they'll do their discovery and so forth, and see, okay, this particular prospective customer fits this criteria, so they get into the next gate. How
Hmm.
much of that needs to be done on the call versus almost like a pre-qualification that comes through?
Yeah, so I'm of the view that trying to obtain as much information before they get on a call is counterproductive. Putting aside the financial qualifier, for example, are you willing to invest if we can solve their problem? I mean, those are okay. But really getting deep down and getting all the information that you can think of
Mm,
to make your sales call easier, I think that's counterproductive because when someone's making a buying decision, they have to go through certain stages of thinking and processes. If and part of those processes are developed from starting at the start, trying
mm,
to understand where they're at. Because when you're trying to understand where someone's at and you're identifying their challenges or their problems or their issues, certain things are firing off in the brain, in the mind, right? You're developing certain emotions when you're remembering, when you're recalling why this issue is a problem. And
mm,
part of that state that you're in aids the sales process. So
mm.
if a closer has an intake form and they look at it, oh, so you've got this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. Okay, right. And we haven't explored that. That hasn't come out organically. It kills the momentum of the call.
Yeah,
So I'm in favor of least amount of information as possible. Have a little bit of a friction about qualification, but
yeah.
have the call to explore all of that.
Which means you have to ask great questions. You have to be present. You have to be
Yes,
vulnerable, and you have to listen really intently and actively.
totally. Yes,
And then,
absolutely.
and that's where the NLP comes in, which I love because I've done all the NLP training as well. And
Excellent.
it's the patterns, it's the strategies, it's the sensory acuity, all the stuff. Particularly if a visual call, to is there a level of discomfort that you're starting to identify with the person when you've asked a particular question that's worthy of exploring a little bit further. What's your take then on, because Tony Robbins, for example, talks a lot about the vast majority of people will do something to avoid pain than they will to actually move towards pleasure. So in a sales call, how much of the work that we need to do, whether we're selling an intangible product like coaching, mentoring, or a physical product, is needs to be geared around, I guess, building up that pain to the point where there's a
Mm.
realization, at least in the buyer's mind, that this is the problem. I've got to own the problem, but then I've got to actually want to take a step to at least start towards solving the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And the inverse closing method is a pain-centric conversation. So the far majority of the conversation is about the pain and the issues. Without that, you don't have one of the motivators
Mm,
as your, and I totally agree with Tony Robbins, right?
yeah.
You have to be, You must, before someone moves, they have to feel uncomfortable and feel discomfort before moving. So even if, so let's say I'm sitting on a chair now, and there's a chair across the across the room. That chair might look a lot better, but the impetus to move isn't there because I'm relatively comfortable right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But what if there was a nail stuck in the chair? That's going to create some momentum to move, even if
It will.
even if the chair on the other side of the room is the same chair, I'm still going to move, right? So that's a basic illustration. And not only do we talk about the discomfort and the problems and the pain that they're in, what we also need to do, this is where closers fail most of the time, is we need to extrapolate the pain into the future to say that it's going to get worse. Now, why is that important? The, presenting the possibility that this issue that they have right now is going to get worse. I'll tell you
Mm,
why. Because the pain and the discomfort they have at the moment might be manageable.
mm,
If it's manageable, it's easier to manage it than to invest their hard-earned money for something else.
that's
And
it.
that's why most sales are lost because they don't apply that principle. You need to take they're going through right now or what they're not achieving and the consequences of what they're not achieving and extrapolate it to the future, right?
Yeah.
And what that creates fear. So essentially, you're selling because the situation is bad and that the possibility that it will get worse, you're anchoring that on fear. And that's what really makes people go, okay, tell me the solution.
Mm. It's almost like I'm just going to create a word, a negative future pace.
Yes, totally. I love
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
love that.
So with that then, Adam, because I know you're very big on sales without the sleaze, right? So
Yeah,
as a closer, right? People who are closing sales, they only get paid when a sale is made, right? And sales is the lifeblood of every single business.
indeed.
What's your take and what's your thoughts on okay, we've got to build up the pain, we've got to understand and get them to articulate and understand that if the problem they've got now, if they don't solve it, it's only going to get worse. How do we get that level of influence where we kind of prod the bear a little bit to get them to make an educated buying decision without being sleazy, without being the pusher, without being the hard closer?
Mm. A simple principle telling, sorry, I do apologize. Selling is not telling, right? If you're telling, so if a good closer has to be able to, in a matter of seconds, create a hypothesis in their mind of why this person is on the call, in a matter of seconds, right? And then they have to test the hypothesis by asking questions.
Yeah,
You cannot test it by saying, are you X? Do you have this problem? Are you going to suffer X in the next 2 years? It doesn't work that way. So
yeah.
the skill comes in where you are able to reverse engineer and ask questions for the prospect to reveal those issues to confirm your hypothesis.
Hmm.
So it's all about really asking and understanding the reality of where they are right now. Because to lead someone, to become an authority to lead someone, you have to first become an authority of where they are.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's disjointed.
Mm.
So the ability to ask well-crafted questions to allow those problems to arise to the surface. And then it's almost like you're facilitating it. Oh, right. So that's the issue. So where does that leave you then? It sounds simple, but it's really hard to do.
Well, it is because it's there's this temptation, particularly if you believe you've got a solution to the problem.
Yeah,
How much
yes.
of is it like a kid in a candy store that just wants to go,
Yeah.
hey, here's
Yes.
the board
Yes.
lollies?
Yes, absolutely. And that tends to happen with really intelligent, academically intelligent closers.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you got closers that have got emotional intelligence, right? Which is a superpower in sales.
Mm,
And then you've got academically intelligent closers. And their downfall is they're too smart because they're like, because I listen to their calls and I'm like, well, why don't you ask this and this? Well, Adam, isn't it obvious? She's broke, or Adam, the business is going to fall apart. You just said that, but that's not the point. The
yeah,
point is that you have to relish the moment. You have to really bring out all of the details because it's those little micrological steps that create that state in the person to want to buy. But what they're doing is they're doing it in their head.
yeah.
They're not doing it in the conversation. And they go, well, Adam, isn't it obvious? That's what kills sales with really super intelligent, academically minded closers. It's their kryptonite.
And is it because also that they are so focused on following their own sales process and sometimes overlooking where the buyer is in their own buying process
Yeah,
and
very
trying
good
to
point.
retrofit?
Yeah, very good point. And what kills the natural flow of a sales process is following the next step of the process
That's right.
religiously. It's like see the sales process is in the background,
Yeah,
should be anyway, and your focus must be on the conversation, what's being said or
yeah,
not being said. It shouldn't be on the forefront of your mind and you're almost like a computer following those steps because it cannibalizes the natural flow of the conversation. But you're absolutely right. That can get in the way.
and I love this. I want to ask you then about salespeople have targets to hit, founders have targets to hit, coaches have targets to hit. When you've got a prospect in front of you that you believe you can help, how do you resist the temptation to go in for the close and disassociate from the outcome and be really truly present to that buyer and guide them to a business decision or a personal decision that they will make
Hmm.
without me saying, well, the next step in the process, Adam, is we're going to fill out this form and triplicates, and you keep one and you send one to
Yeah.
me. And
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think it's really helpful to have the conceptual understanding that the close doesn't happen when you take the payment.
Mm,
The close happens when you really understand where the prospect is.
yeah,
And like I said earlier, better than they have, where that prospect's like, well, man, I didn't ever think of it like that, right? To take every single issue, their concerns, their voids, their dissatisfactions in one condensed conversation for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes, to do that, that's what gets the close. The
mm,
taking the payment and filling the agreement, that's just an afterthought.
yeah,
That's secondary. Primary is there. That's where the close, that's a formality.
yeah,
Where it actually happens is there. And then, like my mentor used to say, find their pain, find their problem, the close will happen.
yep. Because if they want to solve the problem, if they need to solve the problem, which sometimes that's not the same, need and want, if both of those are an affirmative yes, then the natural consequence will be they'll take some form of action,
Yeah.
which will be a
Think,
transaction.
yeah, a close is like a ball rolling down the hill.
Mm,
The hitting the end the ground is the natural consequence of gravity pulling it down, and the
yeah,
gravity here is the gravity of their problems,
yeah,
right? you
yeah.
you establish that the close is it's gonna have to happen
Mm,
unless you
love it.
mess it up.
Yeah, if you don't follow the process, if you don't follow the script.
Yeah, exactly.
Mate, I wanted to ask you about mindset and
Mm.
the mindset of a high ticket closer insofar as how it relates to what we project onto people. So, People who are
Mm.
listening to this from an NLP point of view, perception is projection, and often we will project on things and we'll allocate a certain value to a certain product. And sometimes, based on that projection, based on our values, based on our belief system, we might say, oh, that's quite expensive, or I'm not sure that I would be paying that. So, in the work that you do with high ticket closes,
Hmm.
and you mentioned before, a high ticket item is anything from 3 grand up to 100,000
Yeah.
plus, right? How much work do you need to do with these guys around mindset to
Yeah.
understand that what they think about the value of a particular program, package, product is either irrelevant or they have to disassociate from that. So it's more a solution to a problem rather than, you know what I mean, putting a dollar figure on it and saying, "Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's that's quite expensive. I'm not sure that I would be paying that." And how much of that, if they do have that sort of mindset, can come across in the conversation, even unconsciously.
Yeah. So our first module in our training program is about mindset. Um, and we use a concept called ABA, always be assessing.
Yeah.
Now, always be closing, right? That's the old hat. Uh, but always be assessing. What does that mean? So, the idea that you have to embody as a high ticket closer or in any kind of position in selling is that you are the individual. The sole purpose is to assess if the person you're talking to can benefit from this program or offer or product, right? And if they are suitable for it
Yeah.
as an individual. That's what you're constantly assessing.
Yeah.
And I have that to the last second, even after I've taken their payment details.
Okay.
And that mentality of always be assessing is running from the very moment they answer that call or the moment they come on Zoom to the very last moment, even after, as I said, after the credit card payments be made. Where closers fail is they don't truly embody that, and they come out of that thinking, and it's like a record that skips and it spoils the whole theater of the sales call.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say is that you've got to truly embody it. I've got one of my closers. He's one of my most experienced guys, and he knows the stuff. He knows my stuff really well. And then he had some really well versed salesperson come on a call who was selling some health product, health coaching, and he said, "Listen, I know what you're doing." And that moment, he crumbled.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Yeah, we have to, I was just trying to." And he goes, "I know what you're doing." And I said to him, "Why did you crumble?
Yeah.
It's not as if you're doing something unethical. You
Yeah.
have to assess what the person, where they are and see if they're suitable and if you can help them."
Mm.
And I said, the way you dealt with it was really not the way to deal with it. The way you should have dealt with it, you said, well, look, I'm glad you know what I'm doing because as an experienced salesperson, you know what we're doing here is really important to help you make a
Yes.
buying decision. And he goes, yeah, you're absolutely right. I said, well, that's what I've been telling you. You've got to always assume the role of the assessor. Even when
Yes.
someone says, you're assessing me. Yes, I'm assessing you for your own sake, not my sake, right?
Yeah, well, and when you look at that, and I don't want to necessarily use a medical analogy, but I will. If you go to a doctor, that's exactly what a doctor does. If you go
Yeah.
to a
Oh, what?
specialist,
Yeah.
they're going to diagnose, they're going to assess. They're
You
not,
don't you don't go to a doctor and say, "Hey, I know why you're asking all these personal questions because you want to diagnose me." You don't say that, do you? So,
you just want to sell drugs to me, is what
yeah,
you what you're
exactly.
saying.
Yeah, exactly. There you go, right? So, yeah, so that mindset piece is really important. I use it all the time. When I had someone yesterday where I'm just testing some calls for a new client of ours, a financial product, and he came on the call and um He's like, oh, how do I know this is not a scam? Like literally in the first 5 seconds, it's just really arrogant. He came on the call with the view, this is a scam. You need to prove me wrong, right? Rather than, oh, I need to find out that it's not a scam, right? So that's where
Yeah.
his fault was. But he was like, oh, how do I know this? And I don't want to do this. And I say, look, listen, I don't want to waste your time. It seems like you haven't done your due diligence. Maybe what I'll do is potentially have this call at another time once you do that. And please contact us when you're ready. I'm
Love it.
always assessing him. So I
Love it.
switched that. I reframed it. And I said, oh, it seems like you didn't do your due diligence. Most of the people come on these calls do that. So what I suggest that we talk another time and you contact us when you're ready.
You've now
And he was
segregated him.
exactly, exactly,
Hang
exactly.
on. I'm worthy. Hang on. You can't do that to me.
Yeah,
You're supposed to be
exactly.
selling me.
Exactly. So you never crumble under the pressure if you
No.
have a always be assessing mindset.
I love that. I love that. And that's then linked back to what we talked about before and disassociating from the outcome because you know that you have the elixir. You know you've got the secret sauce, right? And this just doesn't get to be shown to everybody. I've got to actually be very, very clear based on assessment as to whether I show this to you, whether you qualify for it.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's a completely different mentality.
Yeah, and even if they've got their credit card, they're flashing it, right? Because
Is that
I'll
a real
tell you
credit
this.
card?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like I've said, you know what? I've heard salespeople. I've listened to their calls, and the guy's like, yeah, yeah, look, I just want to, I want to buy. Just tell me. So they get to the point where they're taking the credit cards. Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, I just want to go and speak to my wife, or let me go and do some research. And I'm like, do you think if there was an easier way to do this, I wouldn't have figured it out by now? Do you think I like talking more than I should? Do you think I like spending more time on a call
Mm,
than I need to? No.
yes.
I'm doing this. I'm giving you these skills, this insight, because I've failed way more times than you have, kicked
Mm.
in the goolies, as we say, way more than you. So I'm giving this to you, so you don't have to go through that. And they're like, yes, you're right, Adam. Yeah, fair enough. Sometimes people got to learn the hard way, right?
Well, they do. And I just wonder whether sometimes people that are in sales have this fixation or this mindset. There's only a finite number of customers. So when they have a live customer or prospective customer that they're speaking with, they've got to try and maximize that opportunity and try to close them as much as they possibly can. And sometimes I don't necessarily think it's the salesperson's fault. It's often the organization that puts pressure on them to get the number. It's because it's all about them and the number. Versus, you know what? There's an abundance of prospective customers out there. Our job is to figure out whether they qualify for what we have. If there's a match, and if there is, we'll take them through a process
Yeah,
because we
yeah,
want them to be comfortable with their decision, but also, and I'm sure the businesses you work with and have worked with are all about repeat business and
yeah,
long-term viability of customer value. So
yeah,
not just transactions where you sell something and then you never see them again.
yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting is the inverse of that is also a problem as well. To believe that there's an abundant amount of prospects out there is also uh, can also be a problem as well because what they're doing is well, I'll just burn and churn, right?
Yeah.
I'll just do the minimum. I'm going to get someone today, like one after another, one after another, one after another, and they get one. And
Mm,
what they don't realize is that it's not about the ones that you get, it's about the ones that you lose.
mm,
Salespeople, poor salespeople, inexperienced salespeople, in order to judge their performance, they look at the ones they got. They never look at the ones that they lose. And this is one of the things that my mentor taught me.
hmm.
When you're coaching someone, even if they get a sale, coach them on that sales call
Yeah.
and point out the problems. Because I get salespeople when they first start training with me, and they're like, "Well, Adam, I closed this. Why are you criticizing it?" Because I say to them, "It's not the ones that you get; it's the ones that you don't get." So
Yeah.
the advice that I've given, the feedback I've given to you, are the ones that you lost because they were a bit harder than the one that you just sold.
Yeah.
And that's the point.
And it builds more competency and builds more capability for that,
Absolutely.
which should over time improve their conversion rates.
Yeah. So I want to train someone to sell in the hardest situation so that when they're in an easy situation, it's an ease.
Mm,
It's easier.
mm,
But when they're in a harder situation, a harder prospect to sell, they've got the skills to be able to sell them.
yeah.
What's that saying? It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
I
Right?
love that. I love that.
Because if the crap hits the fan, at least you can look after yourself, right?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
So, mate, I'm conscious of time. I just
Yes.
wanted to ask you. You're also the author of the conversation to
Conversation.
client playbook.
Yes.
So, based on what we've spoken about so far, is there anything that would be top of mind that we haven't spoken about that you could highlight out of the playbook? Because I also want to give people the opportunity where they can grab a copy of it.
Yeah. So the conversation to client book is really outlining the inverse closing principle, the process, also with practical examples of how to use each phase of the process. There are 5 phases.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's a fantastic way of really understanding how I sell, how we sell in our organization.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that anyone out there that's selling generally, more so for coaches and experts, they're going to get some value out of it. I hope so anyway.
Nice. Excellent. I'll ask you soon where they can get hold of that. I do want to ask you because we spoke just before we press record about 2025 and 2026 and this thing called AI. Now,
Yes.
I like to refer to it as augmented intelligence. Um, but how do you see AI and certainly in the world that you operate in, AI playing a part in or augmenting what you do and how
Yes.
can it enhance what sales does?
Yeah, so the trend that I'm working on AI and sales at the moment. The trend that I'm seeing at the currently in the industry is that they want to use AI to replace salespeople. I think that's the wrong route.
Mm,
I don't think that the value is there. I think the value is helping salespeople.
hmm.
I want to use AI to enhance coaching. So currently I'm involved in developing an AI platform that is learning the way that I coach. It's quite a long process, but it's learning the way I coach so that every that's done in my agency gets a rating, an audit from the AI machine.
Okay.
And it will suggest and say, well, you could have asked that question. When they said X, you should have said Y.
Yeah.
It's that's the future of AI in terms of sales.
Love it.
AI will replace your order takers,
Mm,
right? Your customer service,
yeah.
but it's it's not there to replace um, high level salespeople. It's not there
Yeah.
yet, right? And I don't think people are quite comfortable talking to an AI machine when you're dealing with something that's kind of really emotional and transformational. Not
Yeah.
yet, anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the future, in my view, and I think where our efforts should be focused on is using AI not to replace salespeople, but to enhance them and support them.
I love that. And I fully concur with that because, I often hear people in the industry talk about the fact that you're not necessarily going to be replaced by AI, but what you will be is potentially demarginalized or replaced by people who can utilize
Who
AI most
use
effectively.
AI? Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Because of what it can actually create in terms of the hyper improvement and the hyper amount of information and suggestions in a short amount of time. that
Absolutely.
that can and you've got to be open to that as well. You've got to be open.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to be open to coaching first and foremost. That's another
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
another
yeah.
topic.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
that's it. Yeah.
but I fully concur with that. Mate, hey, this has been a great conversation. For people who have listened in and like to connect with you, not Adam Cerra, the AFL footballer in Australia, but Adam Cerra, the guru from the sales closing guru from London. Where's the best place for them to connect with you? And if they wanted to get a copy of your playbook, the Conversation of Client playbook, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, so you can visit my website, adamcerra.com. That's Adam, CERRA.com. You can purchase the book there. You can find out our services, our training, and if you want a physical copy of the book, it's also on Amazon.
Nice. Awesome. And if it's okay, I'll put your LinkedIn handle there as
Yeah,
well for people to connect.
please do.
So, mate, as we finish up, as we wrap up, it's been a phenomenal conversation. If there was one lasting piece of guidance, piece of advice for somebody listening to this who perhaps wants to take their selling and their closing capabilities to another level, what would that be?
Fall in love with the art of selling because it
Love it.
always pays back.
Love it. Because we need more salespeople. Because everyone can sell. Everyone doesn't think they can, but everyone can sell.
Yeah, exactly. And we need better salespeople
We
as well.
do. We do. We do. Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And all the best as you continue on your quest of changing the world of sales. Thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Loved it.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.